In, and then Smoke and I will get going. Welcome, everyone. You've just joined Smoke and Nick with Selling Your Cannabis Business. We're going to give it a few minutes and then we'll get started. Thank you. Okay, welcome to Selling Your Cannabis Business. Today I'm joined by Smoke Wallen, really, Smoke, I think you're our resident expert on selling a cannabis business. You've been through it, you've done it, and now you're helping other people do it. So I don't know that there's a better person that can get up here and explain to us what we need to cover and understand on selling our business. I'm Nick Richards. I'm with Green Spoon Martyr. We are a full service law firm in the space, representing cannabis businesses and individuals and all kinds of businesses and individuals. Smoke, tell me a little bit about what STS does, and then let's get started a little bit. And really excited to have you here today.
Great to be here. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, STS is really an interesting investment bank. It's not a traditional investment bank. And what I mean by that is all of the managing directors and the founder and CEO of the bank are entrepreneurs. Like, they're people who have created companies, sold them over the years, and we all got together to help other entrepreneurs maximize their value. So we kind of take a little different approach than many of the traditional banks who I've worked with, and I have lots of friends in those normal banks, but we're kind of like the entrepreneurs bank, in that we really align with our fellow entrepreneurs, and we try to figure out how to maximize value for them. That's been my path. That's been all the folks that I work with, and we're really good at that.
I bet you have some special insight on the things that people are going through when they're thinking about selling their business and selling their business. I bet that's a stressful event. That's something that not everyone can understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely have the empathy for the founder, what they go through. I have done it myself multiple times. I've been involved with a lot of businesses. I've also had the opportunity to acquire, probably 50, buy and sell 50 companies and brands over the years in broader, not just cannabis, obviously, because cannabis hasn't been around that long, but or it has been, but not legally, but in the wine and spirits and hospitality space and other industries. But the entrepreneur's journey is very similar across all industries, and I think we relate very well to that journey and can connect with people very, very closely.
Yeah, we've experienced it here too. And whenever I'm representing somebody who's buying or selling a business, there's a lot of, you kind of get to be friends. I think there's a lot of, you spend a lot of time with those folks, and you have to get through some sometimes difficult decisions. And that's fertile ground for building a friendship.
Absolutely. And it's a journey, right? So you have to, it's almost like you pick who you're going to go to battle with, right? You got to have the right folks that kind of, when things don't go exactly right along the way, they're not going to abandon you, and they understand how to fight through the hard things. And that's what every entrepreneur does. Everybody who's in this industry who has built a business or is building a business has had setbacks and has had challenges. And when you're at that point where you have enough scale and you think it's the right move to kind of take it to the next level and look for strategics and look for an exit, there's going to be setbacks along the way, but like that's what we understand that because we've lived it.
Yeah, yeah. Smoke, we got a number of different topics we're going to jump in today. And everyone, we're going to go for about a half hour this morning. And we can take questions. We got a little carve out at the end to do that. But if you want to put your questions up as we're going along, we'll try to get to them in the discussion as well. You put your questions into the Q&A box, and then we'll be sure to get to them. So, Smoke, cannabis businesses are kind of a special bird out there, right? I help a lot of people understand the cannabis industry and what it takes to get in the industry, and it's not an easy industry, is it? And there must be some special kinds of folks out there that are the types of buyers that are right for a cannabis business. Could you talk a little bit about kind of who those folks are, what those companies are that are on the horizon looking to acquire cannabis companies?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, clearly all of us who got into the space before federal prohibition repeal has happened have a certain risk tolerance that we've been willing to accept that there is a path forward, but it's a state by state path in the early days. And therefore, when you think about who the buyers are, they are all companies or groups who are comfortable with that at the current time, or comfortable with that situation. Now, that being said, we are at the precipice of a whole new group of buyers, right? So, I think yesterday or this week, there was a Republican bill that got introduced into the House for legalizing and taking cannabis off of the Schedule 1. And, that's a really good sign, right? I mean, there is bipartisan groups now who are trying to move this forward. When that does happen, and I'm not here to predict exactly when that's going to happen, but I can certainly say, and I think we all agree that it's going to happen, that when it happens, it opens up the pool of potential buyers to corporates, to institutional capital, a whole lot of all the Canadian guys who are traded in the US but can't directly invest in the US cannabis market. The pool of potential strategic buyers is going to grow dramatically, and the amount of capital available is going to grow dramatically. And I think the things that we're doing today in discussing this, Nick, are really about is it right for you? And B, what do you need to do to prepare to be ready for those folks? The groups that can buy today are the MSOs and other financial groups who are comfortable. A lot of family offices have invested in the space, and that's happening now. But remember, they're positioning themselves for when this big onslaught of new strategic buyers come. So, I think one of the messages that I think we both want to make sure we impart on the audience here is get your ducks in a row early. And I know we're going to cover some of these, like, what does that mean? But the things that you need to do to be able to have those conversations, to be able to engage with strategics, and to be able to engage with that new pool of potential acquirers that is coming, I think are things that you can't start too early to start planning.
Smoke, do you think that the value of cannabis companies right now is going to go up when that new pool comes in? Or do you think it's going to, are we in a peak now we'll then see prices go down? I recall when cannabis was fully legalized in Canada, we had a big run up in the value of Canadian cannabis stocks. And then the day it was legalized, it dropped 30-40%. And so do you see a similar event here when we go legal here and that new money comes in? What's your thought on that?
I think the value is going to go up from here, but it depends on where you are and what you're doing. Right now the value is very high if you're in certain markets, if you have certain footprint in terms of scale and reach. And again, we're talking kind of generics, but are you a group of dispensaries? Are you a producer? Are you in a very highly regulated state, or are you in a well, they're all highly regulated, but are you a highly restricted licensed state, or are you in a more open, competitive Western state? So all those things play into the current valuation. I think that more buyers and more capital is going to inevitably drive values up over time, but that doesn't mean there's not tremendous values today, if depending on where your business is and what markets you're in and exactly what the specifics of your situation are, because there are groups that are positioning themselves for that. And it could be that the real ultimate value for an entrepreneur who has built a nice business is to be part of one of those bigger groups that then gets taken out by one of these later buyers that come in, right? So there could be a couple steps in the process that could be the way to maximize, stay engaged, and create more value and maybe have a couple bites of the apple.
And Smoke, do you think there's some special challenges that companies in the West that aren't in a limited license jurisdiction are facing, is my guess. Increased competition, tighter margins, lower overall sales for many of them. Are there some special sort of tactics for individuals that are in that situation that's different from, say, somebody who's one of the original 18 who's in Florida or something along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, those limited license markets inevitably had a lot of value. If you got a license, if you were lucky enough to get one of those early licenses, obviously they've been trading at very high multiples. But Nick, you and I have talked about this offline quite a bit. I think the Western markets that are more competitive, that are more like where the market is going over time, I think the brands of the future are going to emerge out of those Western open markets. I believe that if you can compete in a California, a Colorado, a Washington, Oregon, those are markets where you're competing on, it's a more pure test of what consumers want and do they pick your brand or your service or whatever you're doing. And in those limited license markets, you may be making a lot of money and your market cap might be pretty good. But that being said, you haven't been tested by a real open market. So I think there is solace for those in those Western open states that are more competitive, have been harder, I think overall, that those are going to be very valuable. And all these MSOs and all these folks that are, kind of have these limited license areas, they're all coming west. They have to go to these markets. You can't not be in these Western states. They're too big, they're too important, and brands are coming out of there. So there is definitely things to do there. But if you have a business that has scaled and you've succeeded and you've survived in those markets, our hats are off to you. I mean, you're successful already. Now it's about how do you navigate that path from fighting in this tough competitive market to realizing that value to a strategic and also explaining to them why it's so important. That's one of the things that Nick, you and I work together on, is like thinking about how do we make sure we communicate how valuable this is, that real estate in California, that real estate in Washington, Oregon, Colorado, that where folks are have a nice business, but they maybe haven't seen the valuations like you have in some of these limited states, but helping the MSOs and helping a bigger pool of larger capital understand how important it is to be in those Western states. And I think that's something we can help folks navigate.
Yeah, we're seeing some of that now, certainly here in Colorado and California, with some of the Eastern companies saying, look, we need to come to Colorado, we need to come to California, we need to compete, we need to sort of, fine tune our product and so that we can compete in the fully legalized market. And so I think that's absolutely true. And we are seeing that for sure. We've been kind of talking through the first two topics here a little bit. The next one is, what are the attributes buyers are looking for? And Smoke, you talked a little bit about, vertically integrated business in a limited license jurisdiction, and brands. There's been a lot of talk about brands and how branding is so important in the cannabis space. I wonder if there's some other attributes that are also really important. You mentioned real estate, of course, and that has been a play in the industry as well. What are the attributes we're looking for in a cannabis company?
Well, look, I think any of these strategics that want to make acquisitions want to see that you've got an operating business that has a team that can operate it. And so when you start, I think I always start with people, right? And do you have the right people on your team? Can they scale? Can they be part of a bigger organization? If not, you need to start thinking about, where do I need to add? Where do I need to upgrade, top grade my talent so that my team is prepared and is also turnkey? Because here's the thing, the biggest MSOs, this is no disrespect, but they're not even that big businesses, and they're not that necessarily well run. So like, I don't like, yeah, they may have a good market cap, but these are not necessarily, large scale consumer products companies. They are not. And they're figuring it out, which means they really do need good talent in these companies that they're acquiring. So if you've got a team that got you to here, but it's not a team that, could scale to the next level, I think that's one of the things that we focus on when we're coaching potential companies that want to exit, is let's make sure you've got the right folks that can take it to the next level. And, that's where I would start, is people, because, you can't run these things unless you've got an operator that can run it. And most of them are not going to want to buy something and have everybody leave, and then like they have to go parachute in and figure out how to operate. Most of them haven't operated necessarily in these competitive markets. And so the things that got you here may be the things that they need. Exactly. Right. So it all depends on the situation, but that's one. Brands obviously are key. I mean, Wana, recently we all saw that deal, but, super happy, for that team, and it's a great exit for them, but that's an indicator of, the value that companies are going to place on brands. And, we've got a lot of, and that's not even very big brand. It's big in our space, but it's not that big. So you think about, like, what are the things you need to do to get whatever brand you have, whatever market you're in, to a point where people see the potential where it can go. And that's where the Wana deal. I mean, you don't get $300 million for a brand doing that volume unless you say, oh, it's worked here in Colorado. She's now put it into these other states, and we can see the pathway to create a really big brand. Therefore, I'm willing to pay up front for that. And we think about that with each of these situations, whether it's a brand like that or it's, an operation, like how can we paint the story, paint the path to these strategic buyers so that they can see clearly how much value they can create. And then our job, you and me, Nick, is to help these guys capture as much of that value as we can help them capture going into these strategic sales.
Are you thinking that, on that employee piece and that team piece, would you lock down employees with contracts before engaging into a sale to make sure that they are, secured in the sale? Are there buyers that are concerned about those things? I've been involved in deals where buyers, get involved and then get a contract with the employees to make sure they stay after they buy the business. I haven't seen a company go out specifically and try to secure contracts prior to that happening. Is that a smart move?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, again, that's we roll up, like, again, as a entrepreneur banker, right? I'm like, banker doesn't even sound right, but as an entrepreneur who does banking, like, I spent a lot of time with the fellow CEOs who, helping them think through that exact question, Nick, like which of the team, like, you don't need contracts for, everybody, but there may be key players that you want to lock in ahead of time that could be valuable in the sale. And then in some cases, a buyer may have, certain capabilities, and you don't want to necessarily be burdened by some kind of contract with people. So we help people navigate that as we're helping them put together their exit plan, their strategy. And sometimes, as these processes start, sometimes it's a, hey, I'm ready to sell. Let's put things together. Let's get everything going. Let's go right to market. That's great. there are other times that they say, look, I'm thinking about an exit in the next year to 2 years to 3 years, but I want to make sure I'm positioned as best I possibly can. And those are things that we like to have those conversations early. The earlier we can get engaged to help make sure that you've thought through these things, that we've got a good strategy in place. And I think we're really, really good at that, like thinking about the strategy of what these folks want, these buyers, and not just the ones today, but the ones that are coming, and helping them navigate that as they go forward. And then you're in a good place, and then you have time to like execute against some of those strategies and get them in place so that when you are ready, when the market is opening up, you've got your ducks in a row. Because you've been in deals where someone's ready to do an exit. Maybe there's a great buyer who's approached them and said, hey, I want to buy your company. And then as soon as they get under the covers, they realize, oh, you didn't do this right. You don't have that organized. You haven't locked in your key people. You don't have the right structure. You haven't thought about this tax thing. There's so many pieces of the puzzle, as you know, that are both legal and operational that you need to make sure are organized. And the more organized you are, the more value we can drive for you, because they're not questioning, they don't have the numbers, or, I have to wait for the financials to come and be done. If you had that stuff in place, the more buttoned up we can help you be as we go to market, the more likely is we're going to be in a position where we got multiple strategics trying to compete for your business.
And it just makes you more attractive in the end. That more buttoned up you are, the more professional you are, the more confidence a buyer has. Smoke, we've got a couple little topics here that I want to just hit on real quick, and then I'm going to ask you a little bit about decks. We get a lot of requests for decks, and I see a lot of decks. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about the deck. But you hit on that exit and entity structure and some things like that. And so we've got these points around the difference in an exit between what's called a flow-through entity, which is an LLC or an S corp, and a corporation. And that's something that I see. I've been involved in clients doing deals and then not understanding the tax consequences because they don't understand the entity that they own and what the impact is of that. So I would just throw out to everybody that that's a super, super important thing that, of course, both Greenspoon Martyr and STS Capital helps people work their way through. And exit looks a lot different for an LLC than it does for a corporation if we're trying to incentivize the taxes for the seller. So we won't get too technical on that, but that's a really important part. And then Smoke, look, deals we're seeing out there aren't always just cash deals, right? There's cash and stock deals. There's deals where there's a partial sale and the owner holds on to the property and remains the landlord. There's deals the other way where a company comes in, buys the property and wants to be the landlord, maybe does a sale leaseback or something like that. So there's a lot of variety out there in what's possible when you're looking to exit, isn't there?
Oh, for sure. And again, that's it comes from our experience as entrepreneurs that like creativity and how you structure things is something that a lot of traditional bankers maybe don't have all these different tools in the toolbox. We've seen so many different deals. I've bought so many companies over the years and made deals with entrepreneurs to keep them involved, not keep them involved, get them earnouts, taking a note back. There's just a lot of different creative structures that we can create that, again, the way we work is we align with the entrepreneur. So our 100% of our, motivation and everything is to maximize the value. And so when we think about those different creative structures, it's all about that. And you guys bring the legal expertise and some of the tax expertise. Obviously, we both have great partners in the financial CPA world who can help with that side of things. And and what we bring is just a creative flair to how do you create deals that maximize value. And it depends on what you want, right? I mean, one of the early things that I always do is that when I talk to fellow entrepreneurs, I first ask them what is driving the decision for an exit? What is your motivation? What do you want? Like, what's your ideal state? Because that will drive a lot of what we help them achieve. Because, if one of your goals is, you want to create a foundation and give back to things that are important to you in society, and you're creating a legacy for your family, that's one thing. If part of your motivation is, hey, I want to take some chips off the table, but I'm not done, I'm still ready to keep going, and I have a lot of fire in my belly, but I want to do it in a bigger platform, that's a whole different structure and a whole different thought process in terms of what we're trying to achieve with the buyers. So part of it is making sure that early on we have alignment with what your goals are, and once we understand that, we can help coach our teams to make sure that we're structuring this in a way to maximize the potential for what that objective is. And sometimes these conversations are interesting. Like, they start in one place, and as we ask these questions, they kind of move to a different place. And like, I really didn't think about that. I didn't think about my kids and like what I want for them and how I want something structured that would have an impact down the road. And the earlier on in the process, as I said, we can get involved, the better chance we can have structures that help you achieve those goals. And that's both legal, corporate structures, the stuff that you guys do, Nick, and also, but just the strategy of it is really where I think we really earn our stripes in terms of like how we engage with people.
Well, it's so important to know that before you start to talk to buyers, because buyers are going to try to steer that ship, and you're going to need to know what's important to you when you can, determine whether or not that's the right direction for you to go or not. Sometimes people get just so wrapped up in trying to sell their business, they forget, they take their eyes off of where they're truly trying to get, and they're just trying to exit. And that sometimes doesn't turn out quite right for people.
And, and if they're like me, for most of us are so busy trying to make the business work that we don't even think about these questions. And a lot of times we don't think about them until like it's a little bit late to think about it, right? So part of what we like to do is prompt those questions, have people think through, like, what do you really want out of this? And then if you have a runway, you have some time, you can really do a lot of things that really help optimize that.
Right. Hey, Smoke, we just got a kind of a few minutes left here. I want to know, I think we've kind of covered like, what do you need to do to get ready in 2022? But boy, those decks, tell me what those decks are, Smoke. Everybody wants to have a deck. What do we do with these decks? I mean, do we shuffle them? What is the deal on these things?
Well, I don't know, like, death by PowerPoint, they did a study, and I think they attributed some portion of the fault of the Challenger disaster to PowerPoints. So I guess what we like to do is, look, there are certain elements that need to be in every investor presentation, but depending on the business, they change quite a bit in terms of what else you add to it. And when I see a deck that is, I mean, there's a lot of decks. There's a lot of decks with a lot of slides. Like, you lose people pretty quickly if you don't focus on the important pieces. So it's like, all goes back to, what are you really trying to communicate? And then what's the reason for each piece of a deck or an executive summary or whatever else you need to add to tell your story. And it's about communicating, right? Like, how do we communicate things properly? So I guess they're important. Everyone has them. Most of them are terrible. But that being said, we've seen them all, and we're pretty good at helping direct people to make sure they get the right story in the right format.
Are they just a way to get in the door, and then, you really need to become a person after that? Or are they even that? Are they what you need to get in the door to talk to an investor?
No, but they're table stakes. It's like, you have to have one.
Yeah.
But they're not going to get you in the door necessarily, and they're not necessarily going to get anything with a deal. But if you're missing it, it's a big black mark. So it's like, you have to have certain things in place, otherwise they'll rule you out. And then, so you have those things. That's not what it's about. That's not going to get you. No deck's going to get you in the door necessarily. I've never seen one that was that great. And most people are like so overburdened with stuff to read, to look at, I mean, this in today's day and age, between everything we do online and social media and just everything we do in our businesses. I'm sure I speak for everyone here that we have too much to do and not enough time to do it. So how do you capture the essence of your story in a way that is succinct and compelling visually? And that's really what I do, is like, how do we make it less is more, right? Like it's, if you can capture it all in a very small condensed way, that's a much better thing than a 50-page deck.
That person walking down the beach with the sunset behind them, and life is just this wonderful, peaceful experience. And I've seen a lot of those ones. I'm not sure that gets me the inspiration I'm looking for to buy a company or not. But do they need to inspire? Do we need to inspire? Is that it seems to be a something that they're trying to do.
Yeah, again, I go back to the fundamentals. It's how do you communicate the value of your business in the most succinct and compelling way? And sometimes that could be a picture, and it could be an executive summary. Sometimes it could be a more elaborate thing, but either way, that's just it's one little piece of the puzzle. You're going to get into the details of the business. You know, what's your financial model? I mean, how many, most entrepreneurs have they have a pretty good handle on their business, but they don't necessarily have a financial model that is easily transferable to a buyer. So have we thought about that? Like, what does that look like? Is it something that the assumptions are clear and it makes sense how it works? And there's a logical flow of like, here's how you scale this thing to the next level. Because by the way, that's what we're selling. You're never selling the past. You're selling what the potential is. If you do this right, and we're really trying to maximize value to that entrepreneur, we're trying to get the buyer to buy into the vision of where it's going to be. And the credibility is what you've already done. The magic is getting them to agree with, here's where it's going. And with your platform, we can get there really quickly. Therefore, you should give us some of that value. And that's really the trick of the negotiation.
Smoke, super good information. I like what you were saying there at the end in particular. If we could put up the last slide that has our contact information on it, that would be great. Smoke and I are willing to take your guys' calls at any time. You've got our information there and our emails and whatnot. And so feel free to reach out to us. Smoke, I got one question for you though, before we get going. I heard you say at the start of this that you're in Palm Beach at a family office conference. Are people talking about interested in buying cannabis businesses there in Florida?
Yeah, like look, a lot of the capital that has funded many of the businesses in the early days has been high net worth individuals or family offices, because of the institutional folks have been kept out because of either they've got some kind of charter that says they can't invest in things that are not federally legal, or whatever reason. They have their investors are pension funds or are groups that also have those kind of parameters. So family offices have been active investors in the space. They continue to be. We stay very current and engaged with that group of investors, and there's tremendous pools of capital out there that are looking for the right kind of operating companies to get behind and support. And yeah, so there's definitely people that are looking at deals, and again, the institutional capital is going to bring literally hundreds of billions of dollars of new capital to the table when the floodgates open. But these family offices are a huge part of the story today.
Great. We've seen those family offices come up and be the first movers in the industry. So it's really great. Smoke, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, STS Capital and Greenspoon Martyr. We're super excited to bring this information to the cannabis industry and those folks that are interested in the cannabis industry. Have a great time today, Smoke. And I see you got your Bermuda shorts on under there. So I hope you will have a good time.
Thanks, Nick. I do not have them on, but I would like to put them on, but I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. And thanks for everyone that joined, and happy to talk to anybody that feels like we can add value to their journey.
Thank you.